Previously on the Dugs. Okay, what we've done here is issue a challenge to a Twinkietown writer and Matt Monitto where we both blindly pick teams. His team is much better, but that means he has to outscore me by that much more. We'll explain further in the video. Welcome back to the Dugs off-season. Our core content involves simulating baseball tournaments and bringing the highlights to you in an off-kilter version of SportsCenter. We like to think of ourselves as less of a gaming channel and more of a platform for telling a lot of baseball stories and a lot of jokes. So if that sounds interesting to you, please consider subscribing and checking out the playlists to watch our first season. On Monday, we revealed the Mendota Manfreds, who are representing the Dugs, and our boy Matt Monitto revealed his team, the Mediocres, on Twinkietown. We've provided a link to Matt's article in the description if you want to go check out his thought process. We're not going to go through the full set of rules because we did that on Monday, but rather, here's the most important bit to understand. Here's the full rosters of both of our teams and the ranking the game attributed to each of our players. And here is where we net out from an overall ranking perspective. The Mediocres are 17 points better than the Mendota Manfreds, so in order to claim victory in this challenge, they'll need to beat the Dugs team by 18 runs on aggregate across 3 games. Our plan was to construct the worst team of all time, so far so good. Okay, who's ready for a little simulated baseball? It's the first time we've ever had something personally invested in the results, so I am jazzed to the gills. We're nothing if not gentlemen, so we'll be playing as the away team in all 3 games and playing our games from target field to make our Twins writer feel at home. Let's turn to the bottom of the first and our first story. We'll be seeing Dummy Oi batting second this inning, and you may be wondering just how he got his name. Well, it's because he was the 3rd ever deaf player in the major leagues. The nickname sounds offensive, but it was his own choosing as he chose to correct people that attempted to use his traditional first name of William. The word dummy didn't have the same negative connotations back in the early 20th century as it does now, as it was just regarded as a term for individuals that couldn't speak. Now, Dummy could speak, but it's said that the deafness rendered his voice to be more of a squeak than anything else. That only went to bolster his mousy appearance as he stood only 5'4" and was said to be incredibly quick. Dummy's legacy lives on in the biannual Dummy Oi Classic, which features members of the Rochester Recreation Club of the Deaf and the Buffalo, New York Club of the Deaf, at a recreated 19th century ballpark. Crowds are said to be some of the most raucous you'll ever see, but not because the games are particularly exciting, but because New York fans are just huge proponents of irony. Truth be told, I'm only telling you about this because I want the Mendota Manfreds starter Pat Mahomes to feel really bad about hitting the squeaky little deaf guy. Dummy gets a bit of revenge, flashing that speed of his, stealing second, and he advances to third on this botched catch by Jack Ryan over at first. And so the Mediocres are in business immediately with runners at the corners and 1 down. But John McGraw flies out to the shortstop, and as quick as he is, Dummy's no dummy and holds up at third. And then it's a little bit of redemption as Jack Ryan successfully fields a ground ball for the 3rd out of the inning to spoil the great chance for the Ogres. 1 inning down, Monitto, you nervous yet? Well, he shouldn't be. Guys made Ogre starter Steve Busby throw a grand total of 6 pitches in the second to record another 1-2-3 inning. And in the bottom of the second, the Ogres get to work. Ferris Fain, Jose Akendo, and Ricky Henderson all single to load the bases with 1 out, and Mahomes, potentially nervous that hitting a tiny little deaf guy may constitute a hate crime, politely helps the Ogres to their first run by walking Tilly Schaefer. Speaking of the tiny little deaf guy, here he is legging out an infield single, bringing home the 2nd run. Say what you will about his stature, but this dude's got legs for days. The Jimmy Outlaw fielder's choice brings home a 3rd run, and Mahomes continues to overcompensate by bringing home run number 4 on this wild pitch. We go to the bottom of the 4th, and it doesn't take us too long to get here. After the 6-pitch 1-2-3 in the second, the Manfreds lasted 11 pitches in the 3rd and another 6 pitches in the 4th. So yes, we appear to be making an ass out of ourselves, but all is well if that ass stays under 18 runs in size. We've still got a 13-run cushion, so there's no room for error on the Ogres' part. Errors like making 2 outs on the base paths in the same inning. Dummy Oi is on base yet again, but he got a little too aggressive with those wheels and gets picked off of first. And then later that inning, Jimmy Outlaw gets gunned down at second by Bill Bergen. He's the consensus worst hitter of all time, but Bill knows what he's doing behind the plate. The Ogres do manage a 5th run in the inning, but without the outs on the base path, it could have been so much more. Top of the 5th, and don't look now, it's some Manfred offense. This is Jim Levy singling and bringing Coy Hill home from third, and we are on the freaking board. If Coy Hill doesn't sound familiar to you, it's because I completely forgot to talk about him in the reveal video on Monday. But he's serving as RDH. I grew up a Cubs fan, and so I saw a little bit of Coy Hill playing baseball, so I blame my supreme boredom that manifested within me at the thought of having to talk about Coy Hill playing baseball for forgetting to mention him. He once sawed off his thumb and nearly another 3 fingers, but rehabbed and came back to baseball. That's the most interesting thing about Coy Hill, but if you're going to fire in a single anecdote, that's not a bad way to go. So there you go, I hope you feel complete. Fast forwarding to the bottom of the 6th, and it's once again Dummy Hoy. His single here brings Tilly Schaefer home from second to make it 6-1. It's difficult to point to a strength for the Mendota Manfreds, but it does not appear I will be pointing to the bullpen anytime soon. Earlier in the inning, Jose Bautista threw a wild pitch, and then Bill Laxton entered the game and threw a passed ball, walked Jimmy Outlaw, hit Williams Astudillo with a pitch, and here he is walking Ferris Payne with the bases loaded to make it 7-1. I think that one was behind his head. And then he proceeds to walk Jose Akendo to make it 8-1. Little bit of redemption here in the top of the 7th. Tuck Steinbeck sees the first pitch of the inning and hits it 355 feet for a home run. Much like a poorly endowed man stuck in traffic, however, it's too little too late, at least as far as this game is concerned. The Ogres added an additional run to make the final 9-2, and I'm a bit nervous as 2 more results like that will be more than enough to chalk up a loss for the Manfreds. There's no question who the big story was today. Dummy Oi went 4 for 4, netting 2 RBIs, stealing 2 bases, and scoring once. I'd be concerned that this offensive outburst was because he heard me making jokes about him, but yeah. Don't worry, that's not another death joke, it's just a joke about him being dead. And so we move on to Game 2 with the Meaty Ogres needing to outpace the Doug's Mendota Manfreds by 11 runs across the next 2 games. Game 2 features Hector Noci facing off against Jerry Royce. I'd previously never heard of Jerry Royce, but he must be a big deal as he's been admitted to the Missouri Sports Hall of Fame. Then again, after a little research, I also noticed other inductees include Ozark's Coca-Cola Dr. Pepper Bottle Company, which is in fact a soda, the 2002 St. Joseph Casino Players softball team, a baseball scorekeeper, Gary Skip Grossnickel and Gerald Shag Grossnickel, which I'm really just mentioning because I absolutely have to look into these guys, a fan named Squeaky Marquardt, and a race walker. So yeah, nice work, Jerry. The Mendota Manfreds come right out of the gate shitting the bed again. As the first 2 men reach, including Dummy Oi once again, meaning he has yet to be retired. And then Jimmy Outlaw brings Tilly Schaefer home on a single. Astudillo brings home a 2nd run on a fielder's choice, and then Jose Akendo closes out the scoring in the 1st with another single. They may get runs in the most boring means possible, but they do get runs. It's 3-0 Meaty Ogres. Not much happens in the top of the 2nd for the Manfreds, but I do want to show you this in case it happens to be the only good thing Bill Bergen does with a bat in the course of this challenge. Sweet Jiminy Christmas, it's a single out of the worst offensive player to ever play the game. Don't say I never did anything for you, Bill. It comes to nothing, however, as the score remains 3-0 until the bottom of the 4th, when Ricky Henderson goes yard with a man on base to make it 5-0. Joke's on you, Ricky. How are you going to steal any bases when they're just handed to you on a platter? I didn't realize just how far Ricky Henderson was ahead of the rest of the pack in stolen bases. He ended his career with 1,406 stolen bases, eclipsing the 100 mark during 3 different seasons and topping out at 130 in 1982. The next closest is Lou Brock, who sits at 938. The next closest active player is Dee Gordon at 333, who, to my surprise, is not retired, but is only signed to a minor league deal with the Pirates currently. I hate to be painted as a pessimist, but there's a healthy chance he's not going to steal another 1,100. From there, the game turned into a bit of a pitcher's duel. Kevin Jarvis went 2 2/3 for the Manfreds, only giving up a single run to Williams Astudillo on a single, and Royce enters the 9th inning still having given up nothing, but that's not going to last. We've got them exactly where we want them as Tuck Stainback opens the inning with a single, followed by a Sport McAllister double. And then Jack, I've already made 2 errors at first base, Ryan comes up huge, bringing both of them home on another double, so that makes it 6-2. That ends Royce's day, but he's charged with a 3rd run as Jim Lilly brings home Jack Ryan on a fielder's choice. That's all they'll get, and so the Manfreds once again lose the game, but those 3 runs could prove to be huge. Instead of entering the final game needing to win by 5 runs, they'll now need to win by 8. Closing out this game, however, the stories on the offensive side of the ball for the Ogres were Ricky Henderson and Willians Astudillo, who accounted for 4 out of the 6 RBIs. And not to be overshadowed was Jerry Royce. It got away from him a bit in the 9th, but prior to that, he had gone 8 scoreless, striking out 8. And so we'll see how large that decision to leave him in for the shutout looms as we move into the 3rd game. Our 3rd and final game features Ruben Quevedo versus Diego Segui. Interesting trivia on Diego. He played in the first franchise game for both the Seattle Pilots and the Seattle Mariners. Oh what, you've never heard of the Pirates, the storied franchise that lasted a single year in the major leagues? It took them a single year to go bankrupt, at which point a little car salesman by the name of Bud Selig, sworn enemy of the Mendota Manfreds, bought the team and moved them to Milwaukee, where they became the Brewers. Let's play a little game the wife and I love to call Whose Fault Is It? Like mostly everything else in baseball, it was all the Kansas City Royals' fault. The Pilots were not slated to join the league until 1971 along with the Kansas City Royals. That was until this freaking guy opened his mouth complaining about how Kansas City had had some form of professional baseball since 1883. And if the league were to stick with their 1971 plan for the Royals, that would end the streak, forcing the city to wait 3 years for baseball to return. So it's this guy's fault. Who's this guy? Well, it's Stuart Symington, and our boy had some pull. His past included a stint as the first Secretary of the Air Force and was elected to the Senate, representing Missouri in 1952. He actually made a push for the Democratic nomination in 1960, but was beaten out by John F. Kennedy. Had things gone differently, perhaps his attention would have been turned elsewhere, but it was not to be, so it might be JFK's fault. It also might be the superhuman subterraneans that live in the center of the Earth. Now I'm going to admit, this one may be unlikely. I can't confirm this anywhere but Wikipedia, but I mean, if you're going to troll by editing the Wikipedia pages, why would you ever start with Stuart Symington? It's possible that Stuart lost interest in public service, thus causing him the presidency after a constituent of his demanded investigation of these superhumans that lived in the center of the earth when he or she read a fiction book that they mistook for nonfiction. Whatever the case, the league caved, allowing the Royals into the league in 1969, but you can't just add a single team or the schedule gets imbalanced. So, the Pilots came along with them, totally unprepared for this bumping up of the deadline. They were forced to play their games in Six Stadium, whose name is another thing I'd love to do a deep dive on, but I can sense that we're getting a little off course already. At one point, the Six Stadium was the class of minor league baseball, but in 1969 it was well behind the times and could not keep up with the expansion that was required by a major league team moving in. It was said that water pressure was non-existent after the 7th inning due to the increased demand. They had many other problems, but I'm sensing it's probably time to get back to the game. So where were we? Right, the Mediocres need to win by 8 or more to take this one down, and here we are in the 3rd inning and no one has recorded a hit yet, which is excellent news for the Mendota Manfreds. Diego Segui is doing his part. Here he is striking out Jim Levy, and 2 batters later striking out Bill Bergen to complete his first pass through the lineup in perfect fashion. Don't worry, Bill, we got your hit in the highlights in the last game. The bottom of the 3rd finally finds our first hit with a leadoff double from Jose Oquendo, but Lemke, Ricky Henderson, and Tilly Schaefer all go down on strikes, so it amounts to nothing. The top of the 4th sees the first Mendota base runner when Jack, I've already made 2 errors at first, Ryan, takes a walk, and then during the next at-bat, he's still second. He then demonstrates that his poor decision-making isn't restricted to just first base, he also makes terrible decisions at second, as he tags up on this Sport McAllister flyout and is thrown out in turn at 3rd on a bullet from Johnny Outlaw in right field. The Ogres get right back to business in the bottom of the inning as they've got the bases loaded with no one out, and then Willians Astudillo brings the first run of the game home on an infield single. Could have been a big inning, but both Ferris Fain and Jose Akendo follow with a strikeout. Mark Lemke walks to bring home run number 2, but the inning dies on a Ricky Henderson fly out to right field. In the bottom of the 5th, a third run comes home on a sac fly, but this ticky-tacky crap isn't doing the Ogres any favors. They've got 5 runs to go, and that's assuming they can keep the Mendota Manfreds off the board, which, let's be honest, it's not the worst assumption to make. The bottom of the 6th sees a 4th run on a single from Tilly Schaefer, but that's all they get. Tick-tock goes the clock, Monitto. 9 outs left, and you guys need 4 runs for the win. We haven't seen much of the Mendota offense this game, and that's because there is no offense occurring. Despite singling in the 7th, it only takes Diego Segui 7 pitches to dispatch them in their half of the 7th. Little spoiler here, Segui would actually go 8 1/3, racking up 10 strikeouts and only needing 89 pitches to do so. But nothing is happening with the mediocre's bat. They get an opportunity in the 8th with Mark Lemke reaching first as the leadoff hitter, but Ricky Henderson takes a K from Rocky Biddle. And Biddle also gets Tilly Schaefer to strike out, so Lemke stays parked at first. The Manfreds get a chance to get out of it with a grounder over to Doug Flynn, but Jack Ryan makes a 3rd error at first base. These throws are good, and he's just straight up dropping them like they're hot potatoes. Well, maybe not hot potatoes. After fleeing the potato famine to come to the States, you don't fumble a spud, but he's doing an extremely poor job of catching the baseball. So they're given a gift, but John McGraw treats it like a fruitcake and gives it right back as he goes down looking. The only way the Ogres can win this challenge now is if the Manfreds rally for 4 or more runs and take this thing to the bottom of the inning so the Ogres have a chance at putting up a bundle. Wait, I'm sorry, did you want my terrible team to actually perform? Have you not been paying attention? Call me Logan Paul because I've never been more thrilled about getting my ass kicked as we are well on our way to rolling our practically lifeless corpse across the finish line as Vic Harris goes down swinging. That's Diego Segui's last batter, and I don't really understand the move, but it's possible they're just trying to get a less accomplished pitcher to allow those extra runs in. So in comes Scott Radinsky. Joke's on you! Jack Ryan is first pitch swinging and first pitch flying out to center. Last chance. Sport McAllister grounds out, and that will be that. The Mendota Manfreds failed to win a single battle, but somehow survived the war. The mediocres needed to edge out the Manfreds by 18 to lock up the win, but come up short with a run differential of +14. I am spent. In all seriousness, a huge thanks goes out to Matt Monitto for not only his collaboration, but his support in the early days of this channel. The positive feedback is what keeps this channel going, so he's much of a Doug as any of us. Especially Hamish. He might be more of a Doug than Hamish. You too can support the Dougs by throwing a like on this video and subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already, as that's the most surefire way the Dougs is going to grow. That does it for us. We're going to have a huge announcement video in the coming week or so keep on the lookout for that. Until next time, I've been Johnny Paprika, hoping all your balls are fair and all of your wood is good. Good night, everybody!